When I moved to the quiet, picturesque suburb of Phoenix, I thought I had found the perfect place to raise my son, Mason. It was everything we dreamed of: peaceful streets, friendly neighbors, and an ideal environment for a young boy to grow up in. The houses were immaculate, the lawns well kept, and the community pool was always full of happy families. But lurking beneath the facade of this idyllic neighborhood was the HOA, and in particular, Karen, the HOA president. At first, I didn't realize how much power the HOA held in this community. I was new, just trying to adjust to the suburban life. My son Mason loved playing outside and getting involved in little projects, like setting up lemonade stands or organizing neighborhood games. I thought it was the kind of place where such things would be welcomed. Boy, was I wrong. The first time I ran into trouble with Karen and the HOA was when Mason set up a lemonade stand in front of our house. He wasn't making a profit, he was just trying to make a few bucks for his summer savings. But that was enough for Karen to notice. She marched over to my house and handed me a violation notice for unauthorized business activity. Apparently, even a small lemonade stand was against HOA policy. I was stunned. It seemed ridiculous, but when I tried to argue, Karen wouldn't listen. The fine was steep, $250, and she made it clear that the HOA didn't tolerate disruptive activities. I fought back, contacted a lawyer, and eventually had the fine rescinded, but that only made Karen's disdain for me stronger. The weeks that followed were a blur of small complaints and citations from the HOA. Too many leaves in the driveway, improperly placed outdoor furniture, and an unapproved shade of blue on Mason's bicycle helmet. Every little thing was scrutinized, and Karen seemed to delight in finding new ways to make my life difficult. Every time I saw her, I felt like I was looking at the embodiment of petty authority. But things escalated after a particularly heated confrontation when I refused to comply with her demands over something as trivial as a garden gnome I had placed in the yard. From that point on, Karen became obsessed with getting back at me. I knew I had to be extra careful. I thought I could avoid conflict by staying out of her way, but Karen wasn't done yet. One scorching Saturday afternoon, I decided to take Mason to the community pool to cool off. It had been a rough week with work and all the HOA drama, and I thought a little relaxation would be good for both of us. We arrived at the pool, and everything seemed normal at first. People were lounging by the water, kids were playing, and the aroma of BBQ filled the air. It was exactly the kind of day I had envisioned when I first moved to the neighborhood until Karen walked in. I saw her immediately, striding with that characteristic sense of authority. Her eyes locked onto us as soon as she entered. I could feel her gaze boring into me, but I thought maybe I was being paranoid. We were just there to swim, after all. I let Mason go off to the deep end, where he loved to practice his diving. But before I could even take a seat, Karen's voice pierced through the air. "You," she called, pointing at Mason. "No running near the pool." I looked around, confused. Mason had been walking, not running, but I didn't want to escalate things, so I told him to stay closer to the edge. But that wasn't enough for Karen. She seemed to take a special interest in Mason that day, and her attention quickly turned into something darker. As Mason swam near the deep end, Karen marched over to him. Without any warning, she grabbed him by the shoulders and dunked his head under water. I froze in shock as I saw my son struggling. He was gasping for air, his body thrashing beneath her grip. This wasn't an accident. She wasn't playing around. She was trying to punish him. "Karen, what the hell are you doing?" I screamed, rushing over to the edge of the pool. Karen let go of Mason, who was coughing and choking. He clung to the side of the pool, tears streaming down his face. His small body trembled from both fear and cold. Karen stood there, with a smug look on her face, completely unfazed. "He needs to learn respect for the HOA, she said with a twisted smile, as if dunking a child was the right thing to do. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My blood boiled. I grabbed Mason and wrapped him tightly in a towel, holding him close. "I'm calling 911, I said, my voice shaking with anger. I immediately dialed the number. 911, what's your emergency? "There's an assault happening at the community pool," I said, my voice breaking. "A woman just dunked my child's head underwater. She's the HOA president. I need help immediately." The dispatcher assured me that officers were on their way, and I could hear sirens in the distance. Meanwhile, Karen stood by, trying to play it off like it was nothing. "This is ridiculous," she huffed. "I was just teaching him a lesson." The officers arrived within minutes, and the community pool, which had once been filled with the sounds of laughter, was now eerily quiet. The officers took statements from everyone around. They questioned Karen, who tried to justify her actions, but it was clear that the entire pool had witnessed the assault. After some back and forth, Karen was arrested right there. The police charged her with assault on a minor, and she was escorted out in handcuffs, her face red with humiliation. I watched as she was led away. Her smug demeanor was completely gone. The entire pool had seen what she did, and they weren't about to let her get away with it. But the story didn't end there. I filed a formal lawsuit against Karen for emotional distress, assault, and punitive damages. With the evidence, including witness statements and video footage from the pool cameras, I knew I had a strong case. The HOA tried to step in, claiming that Karen acted in the best interest of the community, but it didn't take long for the truth to come out. People began to speak out about how Karen had been using her position to bully and intimidate residents. The pressure mounted. Eventually, Karen was removed from the HOA board, and she was forced to pay for Mason's therapy sessions. She also had to move out of the neighborhood, but that wasn't all. Karen's reputation was in tatters, and she found it impossible to stay in any of the nearby communities. As for Mason, he recovered quickly. We spent more time together, strengthening our bond. The trauma of that day didn't last, and instead of fearing Karen, Mason became braver. We stood up for ourselves. And when Karen's U-Haul pulled out of the neighborhood for the last time, I couldn't help but smile. The HOA had learned their lesson. You mess with my child, and you'll regret it.